My guest today is Veronica Boutelle of Dog Biz. So Veronica, can you tell us a little bit about what Dog Biz is?
Dog Biz is a company that is dedicated to helping dog professionals like dog trainers, for example, succeed in their businesses. So, we we learn the skill sets of our profession, how to train dogs, for example, but then there's that whole business level on top of it. And so our job is to teach those skills and to support on that side so that dog professionals can go out and do the great work that they're passionate about doing.
And you have been doing that work for quite some time. How long has Dog Biz been around?
We have been around since 2003. I was in the early 2000s, I was director of behavior and training for the San Francisco SPCA back when Gene Donaldson's Academy for Dog Trainers was part of that department. And I had been a graduate of that myself. And we watched every year as 4 cadres of phenomenal dog trainers graduated out into the world and flailed and just fell on their faces, and not because they couldn't train dogs, not because they didn't know what they were doing, but it's just, we come into this work because we want to help dogs, not usually, we were altruistic, not usually entrepreneurial. And so there was that whole business skill piece missing. And I kept saying for 3 years, somebody should do something about this. Somebody should do something about this. And finally decided to go do something about this. And so I've had the incredible pleasure for the last, I guess going on 18 years now, of working with dog trainers and all manner of dog professionals all around the world, helping them to succeed in business so that they can help change people's and dogs' lives.
Yeah, and it's made a huge difference for so many people. I mean, I feel like you and I connected way back at the beginning of that. And then just over the years to watch how Dog Biz has really grown and served, and so many people talking about the ripple effects of it, what you've done to help people show up and do the work that they feel called to do without being completely drained by it, which is, of course, one of the things that we're always talking about on this podcast is,
right.
How do we find that balance? So the word I chose for you is the word focus, because you have always struck me as a person who has really good focus and drive. So if I were to say to you, what does focus mean? What do you think focus means?
What a fabulous question. For me, it means purpose and freedom. When you can cultivate and find focus, it means that you can really pursue your purpose. Whatever that is, whatever your passion is, whatever difference you want to make for people, that you have the ability to do that. But I also think that it means freedom. It's funny because I think people often misconstrue me. I think people see me as some sort of crazy workaholic, and I'm really not. Like, I like to play as much as I like to work, and focus allows that freedom. It allows that when I'm working, I can be productive. I can accomplish what I set out to do, so that I also can spend my free time the way I want it to, and have as much of it as I want. And so I think it's kind of a combination. I also think that it's freedom too, of just freedom from the kind of stress that we carry around so often, and that voice in the back of our head all the time that's, oh, I should be doing this and I should be doing that. And so for me, focus is so much about being in the moment, whether that moment is about trying to accomplish a task or to push a needle forward, or whether that moment is about being with friends or family or playing or being in the garden, that I can be truly present wherever, in whatever moment I'm in. And so that's kind of what I mean by freedom too, because I think just, freedom from that brain pressure, voices in there. Yeah.
Yes. We are all well acquainted with those inner demons that are in there chatting with us. So when you have that, the focus and the freedom, and you're moving toward your purpose and doing the things that have great meaning for you, what impact does that have for you?
I just feel calm. I feel calm and content. It's interesting, isn't it? Like, I think about how much of human history is about trying to seek happiness and figure out what that is and define that. And you know, this sort of elusive thing we're always after and, you know, trying to grab onto. And I think so often we mistake happiness for, if we think like, if we've arrived, if we finish the task, if we accomplish this thing, if we manage to acquire, you know, X, Y, or Z, that's what will make us happy. But I actually think it's mastering the process that makes us happy, because, you know, whatever, you know, accomplishment we have, that's fleeting. And if you're, you know, if you're anything like me, where you've got ideas and there are things you want to do all the time, I mean, you know, as soon as you've done that, you're on to the next thing anyway. So it's not like you get to enjoy that for very long. And so I think, you know, what really happiness is not, it's not about, you know, some, you know, incredible, like, oh my gosh, I have all these things sort of joy. It's just about, I'm actually happy doing what I'm doing at any given moment, most of the time. You know, and not that, you know, there aren't moments where you wish you were doing something else, but just that I think part of good focus is making good decisions about what to focus on, so that you don't have hours and hours of your day every day taken up with, oh gosh, I wish I were doing something else.
Yes.
Just be okay in that moment.
That's really a great way to describe it, and choosing what to focus on and really having that contentment with it of being engaged in the process and mastering the process. Are you familiar with Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi and the flow state?
Love him. I was just thinking of him myself too. Yes.
Yeah. It's sort of interesting because he talks about the flow state being when you're really engrossed in something. And that often when you talk to people about it, the words they'll use to describe that state aren't really joy and happiness, but they're more the process of intensity and connection and engagement and knowing that I'm getting better at it. And there's this awesome graphic, I will link to it in the show notes, that attaches emotional state to different skill and challenge levels. So let's say you're an extremely skilled knitter, and so you have high level of skill, and your challenge is to produce 5 Christmas stockings by next week. That's super low challenge for you.
Right.
So you're going to be in the boredom category. But if you're super talented and the challenge level is you got 5 minutes, produce the most amazing thing you ever could, the challenge went up and your skill is still good. That's where we start getting into some of these engagement and excitement kind of pieces. But there's this whole range of like where apathy falls, where frustration falls.
Yeah.
If you have low skill, high challenge, super high frustration, there you're stuck. So when you were saying that about that, the element of contentment and doing the work you feel called to do, that focus provides that for you.
Yeah.
That's really an amazing gift. I mean, that is really, I think, what so many people are searching for, because we're not going to find that blissful nirvana state where everything's just always easy all the time. Instead, we want to have being present in the moment and knowing the moment is good, you know, whether you're working or playing or resting. So how do you personally know when you have lost your focus?
I feel frazzled. I feel distracted. That's where those doubt voices come into, you know, those moments where you're working on something and half your brain's thinking, oh, I wonder if I should be doing something else. I don't know. I just think I want to be doing something else, or wondering if maybe this isn't the right thing to be spending time on. So then I think that spins out of control really quickly. You know, that then that agitation, and then it becomes harder to make decisions and harder to make assessments and to figure. So for me, when I start to feel that kind of agitated bit, you know, or I just have my brain somewhere else, that's kind of that early red flag to take a step back and try to assess the situation. Because I think that's one of the mistakes we make a lot of times, especially when we're really stressed and the to-do list is really big, is that we keep pushing, thinking I'll fix it later, because it's so frightening when you already have too much to do to think about stopping and taking the time to assess and address the situation, because you just feel like, no, I'm not getting anything done. But in reality, you're getting the most important thing done, because that's what allows you to get back on track most of the time. So one of the things that I've gotten in the habit of doing is is I put a lot of fail safes in to try to keep myself from getting off track. And one of those is sort of a quarterly check-in, just sitting down and saying, okay, let's stop and remember, what are the goals? You know, what am I trying to accomplish? What are my priorities? Am I making good decisions, you know, to protect those? But also I go through a process each week and each day where at the end of each week, I look ahead at the next week's schedule and just make sure that I've made good decisions about what's on there, that it really does make sense in terms of the priorities and the things that I want to be putting my focus on. Sort of assess anything that didn't go super well this week. You try to get to the, you know, just take a few moments to think about, is there anything I could have done differently that I want to apply next? And then when I finish each day, I take a moment before I shut down my office to look at what's on the dock for the next day. And I take a few moments in the morning to look at that whole day and to just ground myself in, why did I make these choices? Why are these things important? Why might I feel joy about having these things on my plate today? And just being kind of deliberate about that before I just jump in and start trying to, you know, because what I don't want is that feeling of treading water. I think that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
It's that horrible feel like you've just barely got your chin above. And I feel like when I take just a few extra moments each day and an hour each week, and maybe half a day or a day each quarter, I very rarely get to that state. I mean, it happens still sometimes, but it's less likely because I'm being so much more deliberate about my choices and reminding myself why I've made the ones that I've made too, so that just the days, they have more sense.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. And you're so right that people say they don't have time for it because they're too busy, which I get. I fall into the all the things category myself sometimes too. But the practice of looking at what is important this week and how am I making sure that it happens, the whole important versus urgent category, where there's always something you know, clamoring for your attention, but the things that have meaning for you and the things that you're hoping for and the things that you really want, when we keep pushing those off, those will start to erode our sense of happiness, contentment, joy, productivity, because we'll be like, I've been meaning to, you know, one of the things I hear from a lot of people, which is totally up Dog Biz's alley, is I've been meaning to rewrite a marketing plan or a description for a new class I want to offer, or there's something that's a bigger project that they're hoping for time and space to think about. But all of the little urgent things of daily life are coming in and biting at them. And so it just keeps putting push to next week. So your framework of having the quarterly plan of here's what's important to me, and then the weekly sort of review of like, okay, here's what went well this week. Here's what didn't go well. Here's what I need to be thinking about. And then on the daily level of what about this makes me happy? Why do I feel joy about these activities? Bring such deliberate attention to what you're doing in tiny ways that have a really profound impact. How long have you been so deliberate about this?
In some way or another, I think most of my adult work life, but it's something I've refined over the years though. So I think about, you know, some of the tools that I use, some of the you know, the structures, the questions that I ask myself, things like that. I mean, it's definitely all evolved, and it's something that's evolved sort of in concert with Gina Ferris, who you know, who's sort of the other main half of Dog Biz. Mm-hmm. And it's something that we've just, you know, really kind of cultivated together too. We've been using a master schedule, which is sort of a structure, you know, for how we make decisions and, you know, where we place things in our calendars and whatnot. We've been doing that almost since the beginning of Dog Biz, but I think the way we do it and you know, the way we think about it has definitely, you know, evolved over time. So yeah, but I think these things do though. I mean, that's the thing, is you get better and better about, you know, how you do all of these things. But I think for me, you know, when I was younger, I was not good at being in the moment. I was a bit of a stressed out overachiever when I was young. And so it was always about, it was always about getting to the achievement. It was always about the next thing, there was some point in my 20s when I realized that I was always thinking about this cool thing I was going to have in the future, and that I had managed, not that it had been, I had a great time in college, but like I realized like I had spent years and years and years like focused on getting to college, and then I spent all of college focused on what my career was going to be like, and I realized like I am not living, like I'm not. I mean, I wasn't horribly unhappy or anything, but I just like I am not actually enjoying. Like I set out to accomplish something, I accomplish it, and I don't enjoy it. Like I don't spend the time being in it, and so there was. There were a number of years of sort of deliberately learning how to do this and to think differently. And like anything, it's a muscle, you build it. And I think, these structures, these tools and these processes really help. But I think a lot of it too is about, just reframing how we think about things. So yeah, it's been quite a while, but I think it's still evolving, and I get better at it. I don't think it's anything you're ever, you ever perfectly achieve. And I fall down sometimes, and I realize, God, I'm so stressed out right now. And I realize, oh yeah, you know what? I haven't been checking my day, or I shut down on Friday and walked out of that office and didn't even look at the week behind or the week in front. And you just, it's, yeah.
Yeah. And it's comforting to hear that it helps you, and that you sometimes fall down on that, that's real life. I have a friend who moved cross country, and she had above her door, she had a wooden little plaque that said, "The best is yet to come." And she packed it up and moved it across country. And then she moved into her new place, and she set up her office, and she put it up. And then she said she sat down and looked at it and realized, I have spent my life telling myself the best is yet to come. And I don't want to think that way anymore. And I'm getting rid of this. This has to go. And I was just laughing because she's an incredible achiever, and she does amazing work. And I had seen that over her door for years. And I thought, oh, that's awesome. She's so optimistic. She's always looking ahead, and she is. But she said she really wanted to be a little bit more conscious and deliberate about today. Today is awesome. I don't want to be thinking the best is yet to come. I want to be here. Yeah, I love that she moved it. I was like, isn't it nice that you moved it with you, and that you realize this was something you could let go of now? Like,
but isn't that interesting though? It's interesting on so many levels. I mean, one, just sometimes the stories we tell ourselves that we don't stop to think about, and the implications, and sometimes just that something can change meaning over time for us too. But I also love that sometimes the stories we tell ourselves become so part of the background and the fabric that we don't even really realize that we're telling them, in the fabric, and that she had to move, like that moving the physical context of it, like suddenly made her look at it with fresh eyes, right? I think that is just so interesting. But it really does go back to that whole process piece too, about that we all may have amazing accomplishments and victories in our future, and incredible things that we don't know are coming yet, or things that we're actually actively working toward. But it's such a cliche, but like what we know we have for sure is today. And so what a shame to not enjoy this, and what a shame to not enjoy the ride toward whatever those wonderful things might be in the future, because most days are the ride. Most days aren't the big Yahoo moment, So we don't learn how to enjoy the ride, then we miss out on so much.
Yeah, we definitely do. It's such an interesting thing. It was really fun talking to her, because it was such a big move. She had made decisions about every single thing she packed and took with her, and she packed that and took it with her. And then when she got there, she realized she no longer needed that, and it freed her to move forward. So from the perspective of focus, you have spent, 18 years helping people create a clearer idea of what it is that they're going to find meaning and purpose from. And so when you talk to somebody and they say, like, I can't really find my focus, I can't really figure out how to sort through all of the thoughts in my head and get some clarity, what do you suggest for them?
It's interesting because it kind of depends on what it is that they're lacking clarity about. Because I think sometimes we know what we want to accomplish, we just can't figure out what route to take. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we don't know what we want to accomplish. So I think there's slightly different pieces. But one of the questions that I often rely on, and I use for myself too, when I'm feeling uncertain and unsure about something, is I always go back to the question about what do you want your day-to-day life to look like? Mm-hmm. Just literally, how do you want to spend your time? What brings you joy? What kinds of interactions do you enjoy having with dogs, for example, or with dog people? And just literally, what are the kinds of things that you like to do? What would you like the rhythm of your life to be like? How many hours a day do you want to work? What other things in your life do you want to have time for? And then also, what things do you really don't enjoy? What are the things that cause stress or discord or discomfort? And so that we can sit down like within that framework. Because I think so often one of the things that I've noticed in our industry among dog professionals is that there's a tendency, because we don't come into this with an entrepreneurial mindset. We often come in and when we realize like, okay, well, there aren't a whole lot of jobs for us, we're going to have to kind of create our own, that we look around and we look at what everyone else is doing. And then we just think, well, I guess that's how you're supposed to do it. And we copy it. Mm-hmm. And we copy it without a deliberateness of intent or goal. And we also copy it without making sure that it actually truly works for us, as well as working for the dogs and the people that we're trying to serve. And so I like to step back from that whole picture of that sense of like, oh, what I'm supposed to be doing, what it should look like once I've built this thing. And just literally say, okay, let's set all of that aside. Let's blow everything up. Just what do you want your day-to-day rhythm of life to feel like? Let's build a business that creates that for you, while we're also thinking about what it is you want to accomplish for people and their dogs. And we'll figure out, what the intersection is, how we take those two things and build something that is uniquely yours. So I just think that we're all so busy and frazzled. We make way too many decisions without stopping to really, really figure out what the parameters are. Yes. That we want to be mindful of when we make decisions. And so I think sometimes it's just about slowing down and going through that thought process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we basically do the same job in different ways, because as you're saying that, I'm like, yes, that's what I'm talking to people about all the time. How do you want to feel? What do you want to do?
Joy to talk with you.
So one of the things that I find for people when they say that is that they don't have time to do the thinking that they need to do. They don't have time to take a day. They don't have time to take 2 hours. And what I was particularly concerned about when coronavirus hit was that I had talked to so many people who were so stressed out and so on edge that I thought, oh no, one more thing. This is it. And what I've seen is a lot of people really stepping up and changing things and finding that they could make different decisions than they had made previously. Right. And some of them have made some really wonderful, deliberate choices in how they're going to move forward with their careers. Have you seen that as well? Has that been your experience?
Yeah, big time. I think, it's one of the silver linings in this whole tragedy that, so you started off by saying that people often just feel like they don't have time to slow down, take care of themselves, make some deliberate choices, make some assessments, figure out what they want to do differently. People won't gift themselves the time for that reset button. And I think that part of what the pandemic did for a lot of people, yes, it caused a lot of additional financial stress and worry about our businesses, but it also, when everything ground to a halt, a lot of people were faced with an abundance of time. And that was a little frightening, but it was also, there was a sort of pressure, right? You kind of had to stop thinking about, well, what next and how do I, and what will we do? And I've found that everywhere, for example, among our dog walking academy grads, people stepping back and making decisions about, changing the format of their services and their policies and things like that, been trying to convince people to do for so long. And all of a sudden there was a time to stop and think about it, and an opportunity and a reason to do it. And so that as they started their businesses back up, they were in such a more powerful place.
Yeah.
We definitely saw that with dog trainers. When our response to the pandemic was to launch Survive and Thrive, which was something we just opened up to dog trainers all around the world. We did a 6-week free group coaching. Let's pull together and figure out how to survive and thrive through this, through this storm. And it was a fascinating thing because everything had been kind of blown up overnight. There was suddenly an openness and a willingness to consider new ideas and new approaches. And my business partner, Gina, says, she feels like the pandemic in some ways has pushed the dog training field forward 20 years. Like, we probably would have gotten here eventually, but, we're not quick to change. And it would have taken a lot longer, but people were suddenly willing to try things that they would not have tried before. And whether that was getting online and that kind of thing, or whether that was finally having the boldness to raise rates or to change policies or to just think about delivering services differently. And ultimately, honestly, just to step back and think, just to take that reset button time. Because, we hear that a lot too. Oh, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to take a day. I don't have to. And my answer is always like, I don't actually think you have time not to. I don't think you can afford not to. Because the thing is, if things aren't working, whether that's on an emotional level or a financial level or a time, constraint level, whatever it is, they don't tend to magically, those problems don't go away by themselves. I mean, we have to take the time to fix them. And it's frightening and it's scary. And you feel like you don't have the time. But when you take it, it's amazing that doing that, what it does is it creates time. Right? Because you solve the problem, and all of a sudden, all the time you took to solve the problem, it comes back to you, and it comes back to you in spades. And I think the pandemic created an opportunity to do that. But I think it's so important to create our own opportunities, whenever we need to. And I said, like, we build a day in a quarter in Dog Biz where we shut down and we just assess and plan, and we take a whole week once a year to be thinking about the year ahead as well. And those plans don't always come to fruition. I mean, 2020, I don't think we did anything in 2020 that we had originally planned to do, but nonetheless, it allows us that moment to come back and reconnect to what we do and why we do it, so that we make better choices. And even in the pandemic, when everything blew up and we set down all the plans we had, because we do that work, we were able to say, okay, wait, hold on a second. What is our purpose? Who do we serve? What do they need right now? Of all the things that we could think of to do to try to serve in this moment, what's going to be the most useful? Like, it was a frightening time. We didn't have the answers, but we knew what questions to ask ourselves, because we were in the habit of asking ourselves those questions. And so, we were able to find a way forward and through. So, yeah.
Yes. And that program, the Survive and Thrive program that you all pulled together, was really impressive because it was structured in such a way to open those thoughts for people, that there isn't a right answer. There isn't like, okay, here, we're going to teach you what to do now. Right. It was saying, what are the things that you can do now? What are the options you're seeing? What are the things you would need to learn if you wanted to do something differently? And I was really impressed with your program. I thought it was wonderful. So thank you for sharing that. I was happy to participate in it. Because that kind of thinking, that kind of, well, what if, how could I, some of those pieces are so valuable, but often get lost. You instead get advice from someone who tells you, well, you should do this. And then you hit the first stumbling block and you go, well, that doesn't work for me. Right. Instead of the more open question that you were offering, which was, what would you like to do? What would you need to know to be able to do it? How could you move forward toward that? What resources could you tap into for the parts that will be difficult? And then all of a sudden people are like, oh, well, I'd like to do this, but I can't. But what resources? And so that kind of structured thinking is really empowering. And so that was such a huge gift that you offered to the world. So thank you for stopping, reframing, throwing out those 2020 plans and creating some new ones on the fly, because that ability to focus helped everyone. It helped so many people.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
So when we're thinking about focus and we're recognizing that it's important, and hear the idea of like, okay, sit down, think, plan, try to use the questions that help you through it, but it's new. It's a new skill, and somebody's just starting to do that. What suggestions do you have for helping them kind of celebrate small wins as they're doing it, or how to make it easier to develop this habit?
Yeah, well, one thing I like what you're saying about, celebrating the small wins, because I do think, especially, when you're at the start of a learning curve, a lot of times we focus so much on what we haven't accomplished yet. And we tend to focus so much on all the things that are on the to-do list instead of the things that we've actually gotten off the to-do list and all of that. And in our Thrive program, which is the program that ended up sort of evolving out of that Survive and Thrive experience, we open every single session with wins. Like we just all share like what, and it doesn't matter how tiny they are. It's about what steps did you take forward this week. And I think that just what you said, just taking the time to do that. It is so funny to me that in an industry that is so focused on positive reinforcement for the animals, that we don't do it for ourselves. Like it's so funny how often we forget to do that. We tend to be so negative towards ourselves, and the things that we focus on, the things we haven't gotten done. So I think really that's one of the big things, is just taking a moment every day to say what went well today. Because I think most of us tend to focus on the things that didn't. You can get 5 things off your list and be upset about the 6th, right? And so I think that's a really critical piece. I also think just I think it could be helpful too to stop and think about what are the things that maybe most get in your way. And if you can just work on 1 or 2 of those. So just as a random example, we did a lot of work in January in Thrive around your work-life balance and building these master schedules, basically sort of a structure that governs your day, your week, helps you make decisions about where to put things and what things to do and what things not to bother doing and all that sort of stuff. And there's lots of different ways to do them. They can be super flexible or they can be more rigid, just kind of depending on what you want and need. And but the idea is that everything kind of has its place. And what we said is that, so in Thrive, you sort of decide like what level you want to work on any given, whatever the topic of the month is, like how deep do you want to go? So some people are like, okay, I'm going to build the master schedule. I'm going to learn how to do this. And other people are like, I just want to tweak. Like, I'm not ready for that yet. And so simple things like, the kind of the low hanging fruit, easy win, we said, everyone, no matter what level of work they were doing on this that month, just commit to set appointment times. Just commit to set appointment times. Decide when you will see clients, and promise yourself and us and all of your fellow Thrive members that you will never again utter the words, "What time is good for you?" That's just not a sentence that is in your lexicon anymore. And so you say, okay, these are the times that it really works in my schedule to see clients, so that I also am leaving time for myself, for my family, my dogs, the things that that are important to me personally. And then I also have time to work on my business, that I'm maybe a little bit more likely to get that marketing plan done, or, whatever it is, that thing that you've been wanting to do, either in your personal or in your work life, just by not handing the keys to your schedule to somebody else all the time. And so it's just such a simple thing. And it is so incredibly empowering. And if you just those little steps sometimes, and you get a taste of that, you get a taste of how well that works and the kind of impact that it has, and the fact that, oh, people will actually still schedule with me. Nobody's running away. In fact, they want me even more because I respect myself. And, I'm that much more I'm that much more, interesting and valuable in their eyes because I value my own time. And then, you get one little win like that and you're like, oh yeah, okay, what's next? I'm ready to take the next step. And it's just, I think just things like that, or taking the time on Friday to put your schedule together for the next week so that Sunday doesn't feel stressful. That horrible thing like around 2 o'clock on Sunday where you're like, oh God, Monday's coming. Like, really, like, set an alarm for an hour before you want to be finished on Friday and spend an hour setting the following week up and see if you don't enjoy your weekend a little bit more. And then get up Monday morning and give yourself 20 minutes to reacquaint yourself with the decisions that you made and see if your week doesn't start off a little bit less harried, because just simple things like that can make an enormous difference. You don't have to do it all at once. It's, you don't have to do it all at once, but you gift yourself one or two little things like that and see where that takes you.
Yeah, I think that those are really powerful suggestions, and actually ones that have been super helpful to me. The Friday wrap up has made a huge difference for me to maintain what's important for me long term, see what's coming and what I need to be prepared for the next week, and also to notice and celebrate the wins of the current week, because it is so easy to forget. My family does a Friday night Zoom call, the extended family, and it's only been since coronavirus, but now it's been, 9-10 months of this. And we've gotten to the point where we're like, well, nothing happened this week. And so one of my goals is to actually look at my week and be able to say, oh, this week I had, several great coaching conversations, and I started working on my, the group coaching situation, and we're moving that part ahead or whatever. Because by Friday afternoon, you don't remember the week, and you don't remember the wins from the week for sure.
Right.
You maybe remember the 8 emails that you still need to send, but not the things that went really well.
That's pretty good.
So having, dedicated planning time, that's just a habit. It just is, can be very, very helpful. I am someone who resisted it for a long time. So I understand.
What was behind that resistance, do you think?
Some of it was just, I didn't have the organizational systems in place. Like I didn't know what to ask myself. I didn't know how to think it through. And then I thought, well, it'll all be different by Monday anyway. And it was like, it will be a little different by Monday, but it will not be substantially different by Monday. The whole big rocks theory, we need to figure out what's important and build things around it. But I've also always been a little bit of a, well, we'll wing it kind of person. So, so I think that was a big piece too. I was not the trainer who showed up with dedicated lesson plans for all the 100 things, because I would get in the moment and decide what we're going to do based on what I would see there. And that works great sometimes in a one-on-one appointment, but it does not always work so great planning a life.
I think too that sometimes there's that sense of like, I think a lot of people I talk to, they don't want to feel boxed in, that it just feels rigid to not have choice. And I totally get that. And so, one of the things that since we haven't talked about it in enough detail to really get a feel for it, but I just want people to understand too, this system can be as flexible as you want it to be, that you can, some people live by a really rigid schedule, but I like to have choice too. Like, I like to be able to, I like to be able to get up in the morning, sit down and go, oh, I don't actually feel like doing that today, and have a little bit of flexibility to, we work for ourselves. We should be able to be our own bosses. And so I think if, anyone listening who is thinking, oh, I can't do that because I would feel boxed in, just to know the whole point of a master schedule is to build one that works for you. And sometimes you need flexibility because you just want it. And sometimes you need it because, you've got all kinds of family stuff you're juggling, kids homeschooling and all that sort of thing. And, that it's about building something that does accommodate your personality and the complexity of your life, accommodates it and supports it in a way that just makes it all, more comfortably manageable.
Yes, I think that's really very important. And the whole idea of figuring out like what it is you're working toward and keeping that as your North Star instead of just dealing with everyone else's stuff that comes up, which is where we often find ourselves if we don't have a North Star.
Yeah. And that's so important. I think that we were just doing some work too. One of the things we were talking about, when we were working on master schedules and things like that, we did some work around saying no. and I know this is something that, that I'm sure you talk about a lot too, that, right, when you understand what your priorities are, what your North Star is, as you said, what's really important to you, it's hard, but it becomes easier. It is like a muscle too, learning what to say no to. Because I do think that a lot of the time that we feel distracted, that we don't feel focused, is because we're doing things that, like you said, is the important versus the urgent, right? And I think, and also we, as I said before, we tend to be, those of us in this industry, we're altruistic. We do not like to say no. It does not feel good. We want, and there's a reason, there's always a reason to say yes. But what always breaks my heart is then encountering dog professionals that a big part of their burnout is because they feel guilty that they don't have time for their own dogs, or they're not taking care of themselves in terms of sleep or exercise or eating well, or they're struggling in relationships, personal relationships, because they're working too much, and that's created tension and resentment, and it's just all of those sorts of things. And I think that it's so I don't think that it ever gets easy to say no, but you can absolutely create a framework that makes it much, much easier. We did a lot of work around, how do you make those choices? Because one of the things that often happens when you build a master schedule is you realize it makes you confront hardcore the fact that the reason you feel crazy is because you're literally trying to do you're trying to fit 40 hours of work into an 8-hour day, and it's just not possible. And then you have to make those really hard choices about what to set down. But I think that when you have a real clear sense of what your priorities are, what really, really matters most to you, both in work and in life, that it makes it a little bit easier to do that. And then to learn some language around it so that you can do it in a way that feels, authentic to who you are as a person. But I think that's just that's so critical. You cannot focus if there's more on your plate than is actually literally possible to do, because there will be a part of your brain all the time that is worrying about all the things that you're not currently working on. And so if you don't have a sense that it is actually possible to accomplish what needs to be done in the amount of time you have, you will never achieve focus. There's just because that stress will be there all of the time.
Yes. And once you do make some of those choices, you'll find that some things that took you a long time before get faster and easier because your brain isn't spending so much time thinking about all the other things. Like you are able to make forward progress on the things that matter so much. This has been such a fun conversation with you. I really enjoyed talking with you, Veronica. So if people wanted to learn more about you and your work, how could they do that?
So you can learn all about what we do at Dog Biz at dogbizsuccess.com. And if you are particularly interested in our Thrive program, which it's basically an ongoing membership community where we create the time and space to work on your business, to learn those skills. And we do that in a really strong community setting. Because so much of this, there are the concrete business skills, marketing, things like that. But so much of this too is all of these pieces we've been talking about, the human pieces of just
the human
running
pieces,
the business and all, and balancing that with life and all of that. Then you can find that at dogbizsuccess.com/thrive. And that's, just to so that you don't go there and get surprised. We are a closed community, and we open once or twice a year to new members, but there's a wait list there. So if it's something that is interesting to your members, that they are welcome to put their names on the wait list, and we'll make sure that they know when we open next time.
Well, that's awesome, because I am also a huge believer in community learning and, small group coaching and larger community events, because there's really something magical about finding some practical skills and having a safe place to work on them, and having the shared experience coming together really it can be very profound. That's a piece that I'm always building into my stuff too.
Yeah, it's what I love most about your work, because I think that, this industry, has always kind of had a reputation for isolation, and that we're maybe not always as comfortable being open and vulnerable in front of each other as we might, and I think that was actually, that was one of the other sort of odd and surprising silver linings of the pandemic, is that there was this sort of moment of being able to look around and realize, we're actually all in this together, and we're all a little scared, and we're all a little vulnerable right now, and sort of learning a new way of being with each other and supporting each other and doing the work together. And I really, I admire what you do, that focus of that, of reminding us all that there really is this incredible human component to the work that we do, and that we are humans doing this work, and we focus so much on the animals, and too often forget to take care of ourselves. So yeah, just love that.
Well, thank you. This has been a lovely little mutual admiration society here. I've really enjoyed talking with you, Veronica. It's been so much fun. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Colleen.